removed from their homeland. Before I go on, I do want to read the Miami University's Land Acknowledgement Statement. Miami University is located within the traditional homeland of the Myaamia and Shawnee people, who, along with other Indigenous people, ceded these lands to the United States in the First Treaty of Greenville. The Miami people, whose name our university carries, were forcibly removed from those homelands in 18. Remember, the university was founded in 1972. A relationship between Miami University and the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma began and evolved into a reciprocal partnership, including the creation of the Myaamia Center at Miami University. The work of the Myaamia Center serves the Miami Tribe community and is dedicated to the revitalization of Miami language and culture and to restoring that knowledge. Miami University and the Miami Tribe are proud of this work and the more than 140 Myaamia students who have attended Miami University since 1991 through the Myaamia Heritage. Honour. Now back to the event. One of our goals is the university that sits on the Miami Tribe homeland, which a pathway forward based on mutual understanding. So I've got two very special guests. I've got Daryl Baldwin, who will start by providing a history about the context and history of the Miami Tribe. And then Chief Lankford will update us a little bit more about what the tribe does today and future directions. As we often do, you'll have plenty of opportunity for questions about our speakers. I want to give a more formal introduction. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge some audience. Kudu Karastra, been a great partner and friend of ours, spoken to us on a number of occasions, really foster an citizen. I also understand that we've got Atsuko and Joe Leonard sitting in the audience. Joe was a professor here. I believe that Chief Floyd Leonard, your father, served as a chief. And I believe that your father was very instrumental in cultivating a relationship with the. I also want to acknowledge the President of Hutley, who was elected as the second council. Now to introduce Chief Douglas Lankford and give you a little bit of bio about him. The first question, Chief, was what's the job description of a chief? Now you're born a chief. That was a very important, and you're elected a Democrat. But I did find a little bit of a share a bit. So Chief Lankford has been chief of the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma since 2013. And prior to that, he was a second chief position. And as I said, it's an elected by the citizens. As chief, he presides over leadership meetings, annual general meeting of the nation's council, and is a signatory for the tribe on all political, sovereign, and legal concerns. In fact, I'm told that directing the tribe's governmental affairs on the federal, state, and intertribal level, a major part of the description, in fact, takes quite. In addition, Chief Lankford manages multi-million-dollar budget of various federal grants and tribal entities, preserves and promotes the tribal culture. Mission Aikwe Akima Land. Thank you, Chief. Daryl Baldwin is a citizen of the tribe of Oklahoma and was born and raised in the Great Lakes area. Currently resides. Daryl's forefathers were active in the political affairs of the Miami Nation, dating back to the 18th century, and he continues his dedication towards tribal determination through his efforts in language and cultural. Daryl was born during the mid-20th century, at a time when the last speakers of heritage language were passing. This loss motivated Daryl to begin speaking documented language resources and linguistic support, which ultimately led him to pursue an MA in English linguistics at the university. With the support of his wife, Karen, they've embarked in 1991 on the difficult work of raising their 4 children with the language in a homeschool environment. Daryl was asked to be the founding director of the Myaamia Center he'll talk about this during the presentation. In the fall of 2016, Daryl's lifelong effort, arguably those of his family, tribal community, recognized with an award from the MacArthur Foundation. More recently, Daryl was nominated by President Biden to the. We were talking just before this event about amazing work doing, trying to develop understanding at the federal level, tribal revitalization. Mission Highway. So now I'd like to pass the microphone to Daryl, who's.
Shinewe, I appreciate the opportunity both to be business school. It's been quite a while since I've been anywhere. Just want to start by saying, Aya, Ewe Neola Koke, Ewain's Wahanen, Myaamia. Ewe, it's really good to be here tonight. I want to introduce you in the Myaamia language. Myaamia language, native English is immigrant. I say that because sometimes we need to remember that although English is the national language, and speak English, but there are many indigenous from here. By from here, I mean if they're going to be spoken here, other place on the from and where it survives. Language and culture is central to our identity as Myaamia people. Have an inherent right to our culture, to our heritage, want to be able to express it and pass it on. So I don't want to take a lot of time today because I'm very honored to be here with our elected leader, Chief Lankford, who's time visiting with you all to have time to visit. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just giving you some context. I think that that context will allow you to maybe make sense out of why we do what we do. What is the colonial structure around us that put us in a position to do what we do, and how we utilize those resources to move forward as a sovereign, dependent nation within the borders of the United States. For this first slide, I chose this specifically because it represents a lot of different things. But one of the things that it represents is being back together. We're in a period of revitalization, period of taking hold of those pieces that were significantly story that I'm going to tell you. And there's a lot of youth in this. Youth are very important to us. Our elders are important to us. Community is important to us. We know that our youth are, in fact, our future. We have to invest in them. By doing so, we have a future. Simple. When we talk about homeland, talking about a landscape that's familiar to our ancestors, to us today, in regards, I've removed the state borders. And so I want you to just kind of look at this a little bit. States sense of where we're at. But we're really talking about all of the state of Illinois, Indiana, western portion of Ohio, lower portions of Wisconsin. This is what we consider to be Myaamia, place of the. And this is a place that was intimately known to us. Many of the river names are in our language. Many of the English names like the Wabash River and the Myaamia River, Indiana and Ohio, are actually derived from indigenous. People don't. Our language is still prevalent. It's very much. In the middle of that map is a red central place. This is the center of our home, where our summer villages were located along the Wabash River, Wapashiki Sipiwi in our language, extending from Fort Wayne, Kikayonge, all the way down to Waiatanwa, which is Lafayette, Indiana. That entire region is the center of our homeland. The little red dot in the lower corner represents where the university is sitting today. See, university is This was a shared landscape. There are lots of tribes who claim this as a homeland, and in this particular region here, Shawnee or Shawanuke, as we call them in our language, our indigenous. The, the Myaamia tribe, over the course of many years, beginning in 1795 with the Isle, eventually would sign 13 treaties. Those 13 treaties would cede the vast majority of our original homelands over to the. This is at a period of time the United States is growing, states, they saw tribes as in the way. Treaties are documents between nations, and the way that they dealt with the transfer of those ultimately of our people through the treaty process. Few historical connections to Myaamia University. One is that I mentioned that the Treaty of Greenville was university was chartered in 1809, so there's not a lot of difference or not a lot of time between those two events. Eventually, by the 1840 treaty, Miami's agreed reluctantly and against their will to be relocated west of the Mississippi. This was an outcome of the 1830 Removal Act that Congress signed to remove tribes east of the Mississippi to lands west of the Mississippi. There's a lot of reasons why they didn't want tribes in the eastern part of the United States where states, but a lot of it had to do with sovereignty, on a sovereign within each of these states. The Myaamia actually signed the 1840 treaty, our ancestors, thinking that they wouldn't actually have to be moved, relocated. I want you to understand that being in a place for a long period of time means logical ties to that. Many generations have been born and died and buried in that landscape. Our lunar calendar system reflected the ecological cycles that witnessed seasonally. Our traditional stories were tied to location in that landscape. It wasn't about just going to live. It was about being pulled away from something central to our identity, that landscape. But nonetheless, in 1846, the federal government forced the relocation of the Myaamia on 2 canal boats. We began the long journey west. You can see by the dates there that they began on October 6th, and it was November 1st before we landed out in really what was the unorganized territory. It wasn't the Kansas. But we passed by Myaamia University on October date today, 175 years ago, probably at a time that Myaamia University was. So again, there's a second historical. They eventually went down to Cincinnati. They were loaded onto steamships, the journey west, landing in Kansas landing, and then walked to Sugar Creek, what was supposed to be a 500,000 acre plantation. Later surveys show that it was 300. Have to be rectified. Myaamia weren't the only tribe removed. Many other tribes removed west along that eastern side of Kansas found their homes. We weren't there but for 30 years before the Kansas-Nebraska Act of '84, I believe it was, opened that up for settlement, created statehood, and again, the other tribes that were there were forced to relocate down to what was Indian Territory. It was supposed to be a state that was set aside for tribes being relocated, mostly from the eastern part of the States. And so that's how the Myaamia tribe wound up being in what is today Oklahoma, and that is where our government seat resides today. In both of those relocations, families stayed behind. So today our population centers are around north central Indiana, eastern Kansas, also our current homeland, Oklahoma. These are the population centers that we work with today, that we try to provide support with, also engage on language and cultural revitalization. I would also say that there are Myaamia people who live in almost every state. One of the things that was preserved, a lot of things lost in that process, was our inherent right to govern ourselves. And I say inherent, and I stress that. Congress didn't give us our sovereignty. We already had it. We're governing ourselves long before there was states. We preserved that right process. And so upon our arrival in Kansas, new elections were held, new leadership, because the removal fragmented the. We wound up with a new leadership. It's important also to know that our leaders were elected by the entire community. 1846, women were not allowed to vote in the United States. Women have always been part of our voting process and our election of leaders were at that. So this is an image of the leadership that was in Kansas in 1869, just before the second relocation into Oklahoma. There's a couple of government agencies. And this is a picture of elected leadership from 1962, which is the year that I was born. Again, we were both born that year. Again, preserving that leadership structure. Keep in mind that during this time is the boarding school era, so there was a lot of policies to eradicate indigenous languages and cultures, but we maintain that inherent right of self-governance. And then this is our leadership today. So sovereignty is central to our existence. It's a preserved right of self-determination. So it's really important in the economic development Chief Lankford is going to share with you. And it's well recognized. So there's 560 some odd federally recognized tribes in the United States who all have inherent powers of self-governance. It has been well recognized for quite a long time. We have our own police force. We issue our own license tags. We govern on our land. Myaamia University and the Myaamia tribe came together beginning in 1972. And it was a relationship that started around a mascot. Fortunately, we've moved away from that to more meaningful things, and also the reconstitution and revitalization of our cultures. Learned a lot in that process. We're going to be celebrating 50 years in 2022. But I want you to know that this institution has a very unique relationship with a sovereign tribe. The Myaamia Heritage Program, established in 1991, started with 3 tribe students who would come to Myaamia University, and today 39 tribe students on campus. A lot has changed since 1990. The Myaamia Center was really created to respond to the loss of language and culture. At some point along this journey of relationship between tribe and university, tribal leaders reached out to Myaamia University and asked, could you help us with language and cultural development? And so in 2001, the Myaamia Project, it eventually become Myaamia Center, was created. The Myaamia Center is really the research and educational development arm of the Myaamia tribe of Oklahoma. It's directed by the tribe, and the primary audience that we respond to is the tribal community. But within the context of this relationship, we have an agreement to share that work on campus, and to bring students who may be interested in some of that work into that space. So that's one of the reasons why. And so I'm going to kind of stop there. One of the things I want you to see for Chief begins to share what it is to be a modern tribe today, is that many of those events in the, I know they were a long time ago, left a tremendous amount of damage to the community. We are in the phase of trying to rebuild the tribal, not just in terms of its language and culture, but its economy, its social structure, its fan base, strengthening its sovereignty. There's a whole host of things that tribes have to pay attention to, have to maintain. So my hope is that we've kind of set this up in such a way. We hope to have a conversation with you. I encourage you to start thinking about maybe what your questions would be and to begin a process of sharing between ourselves and you all.
It's Chief Lankford. But very excited to be talk with you. Who we are as a people. You're right. Elected. Now we got happened. Our nation. We've seen homeless. Help. County to all of our business. Tribe would come right ahead. Ties back. Take care of tight. Regular day. So they uh, we put one of our hard to get particular specific to help our scholarship. '70. We have our PSI cabinet, San Antonio, Texas. Custom cabinet. Really well, the supply chain. Have a little our 8/8 taking us to get IB things about never grad. Lots of I've never graduated. Uh, do them. We did them. Mexico. They have that company. Tribe can do the act. Still be able to. So time we had 17 or so. A lot of tribes have technical. Here about us are a song. We have to do often. Our funding companies have a way. Tribe will actually of it. Poverty, good tribe, port, poverty, do waiver, and that's how come. And
My first, what does it mean? And how do you,
time. So I, as we up citizenship, Kansas, again, Oklahoma, people choose their time. Our census was 19, Kansas, in Germany, who was in Kansas at an document, single putting itself back. Happens.
A lot of us see ourselves as dual. I'm Myaamia because my father was, his father was, mother was Myaamia because her mother was the linkage for our citizen.
question? I have more questions. Okay, so one for Daryl. I understand I was impacted actually when I person who spoke the language died. So tell me about the work you've done, both the tribe and the centres.
So I'm going to frame this first by saying that Europeans arrived on the shores of this about 300 populated. Today there's about 197 of those languages still left, but all of those struggling largely because pressures national level that we struggle with. And early 20th century, more of a pressure. For the Myaamia tribe, our time in the 60s, fortunately, have a lot of documentation, so engaged in archive-based revival, utilizing archival material, reconstitute language of our ancestors, then to teach that language, wide range of age-based tribal programs, way to strengthen the identity of the next generation, also to bring about a healing to the community, name an important part of their.
I have a question about stabilisation. So when we met a couple of weeks ago, beautiful afternoon, we talked about how to affect change and change. And in particular, the preference of your people to work within the context that you face rather than putting energy into it. And yet, by doing that, you've expanded on this point really interesting.
Yeah, I guess from maybe it's just way in which had to out how to look back at our history, time we've tried to first change, and we learned from realized that we're largely misunderstood here. Brown tribes are fear of their sovereign status, and it's that fear I think be and so I think the beauty of what we do here at Miami, take the time, share with each other, learn from each other. It's actually one of the terms that we use to describe this Pondingi, learning from each other. Because in the context of learning and sharing, we create understanding. With that understanding, we begin to lessen levels of fear, oftentimes cause a great damage. And so we're really striving to reach out, to provide an opportunity to learn about what's to us, why, and tribes are a big part of American history. To erase that history, not acknowledge the events of the past, learn from them, move forward from them, and not stay in that trauma. We need to be able to move beyond the trauma of that, I think is really critical. So education has been key, not only for the revitalization of our own selves and our identity, but in helping others understand what tribes are or not to be feared.
This is a question of Chief Lankford. Then I'm going to walk up and hopefully someone wants to grab the microphone. Put your hand. So while I'm on the move, you've got the microphone. I'm really interested in the programs you put your out.
So, we've got some companies producing for us, have to have operate. Portion can come back to the tribe, but what we try to do is 500 medical times we try to do that. Help. So I never to give throw a lot of new continue to provide that.
Okay, it's got the microphone. Put your hand. Questions. You can ask any question. I'm good at answering all sorts of questions.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you all. I had a question to that are under your sovereign state, is that comparable to them creating contracts with international companies? If not, what is it comparable to? The second part of that is when you are working with outside of the tribe, do you put in kind of educational systems to let them know how the tribe runs and how this runs?
So partnering, partnering, partnering with us, protege partnership do the full-on purchase partnership do. So your protege, usually those are very large. Get work becomes very attractive for them to partner with tribal leaders. You're able to face that. Get to make to learn how to do better, create our own business. Up, we become that partner. Haven't done a lot of out of the partnering. We have poverty business could actually manufactured it, sold it from there. We'd be able to charge tribal tax, split it with our partner. State real plus. Tribal land.
Hi, my name is Andrew, and Mr. Baldwin we talked about the history of the Myaamia tribe. You had said in the Sugarland Creek deal that your community was awarded 500,000 acres, but later served 300,000. So, are there efforts currently to rectify kind of those?
Without going into a lot of treaties are really about land. A lot of expressions around quantifying that cost of that land. Even in some cases, land that was actually so many years ago, Congress Indian lands can set up to try to rectify unresolved issues. Some of that still very much it's about trying to correct the wrong. And when you're told to give up 500,000 acres of your land in Indiana, best reservation holding that is a nation, in exchange for 500,000 in the unorganized territory, then years later, when that land actually gets surveyed, you find it's really only 300. And what happens with discrepancy there? So, Myaamia tribe did resolve that with
Sovereigns, hardest states, very easy. Inland claims could.
Um,
My question. How do you hope
Relationship, it's not another like it. And you heard me introduce myself and me. That would have never, well, happened because of the partnership center and everything that happens, the efforts that happen are people, self included, start learning the started at that point, help me. Recordings to listen to. There were visuals, for events. All of those things played into our whole tribal nation advance. So what more would I want to see? I would just want a continuation of what we love and honor that showed our nation. Diversity here is unbelievable. Hard to describe what all of things that changes that come. Youth educated, they're participating. Students at the center, they're the ones that come on. Now they've been knowledge. Kids at home here, our students here, center, the ones putting these kids, all of that work. What more I would ask university.
Hi, how's it going? I just had a quick question. So, do you guys have like your own system of laws that you abide by, follow, and how does that kind of work with corporation with the?
We have our own court. We have our laws oftentimes mirror state laws. Aren't always the same. Have prosecuted people that have broken tribal. Go into the McGirt issue that is happening in Oklahoma, but that whole nother, because that opened a door for tribes sovereignty. Yes, we have our own court system and we have our own set of laws, but we are limited to crimes except for violence. Someone commits violence against a Native woman, we can actually crime can higher. This part, misdemeanor we can deal with, but we do a lot of options. Those type things in our court, but with McGirt, will change.
A lot of government agencies oftentimes refer to tribes as treatment as state. Parallel example. A tribe on its sovereign lands is oftentimes never above federal law.
Hi, thank you both so much for being here tonight. My name's Will, and I guess my question is, how can we as students and as future business leaders get more involved with both your mission here on campus and wider as a tribe?
Let Daryl deal with this.
So I think one of the best things that can happen is your awareness and knowledge can grow through the Myaamia Center and through the relationship. We're doing our best to get out there. Here's what I want you to think about. There's 560 some federally recognized tribes that control 56 million acres of United States soil and have sovereign status on that. In the state of Ohio, K through 12 education only mandates that you learn about indigenous people in 4th grade. And it's always contextualized history. We're not a people of the past, we're a living people with the past. And I'm not sure how to rectify that. That's a huge problem that we as a small tribe can't deal with. But here on this campus, we can raise awareness. And I think that I would encourage you all just to continue trying to explore, learn about tribes. Maybe even if you can, follow a little tribal news, especially for those of you in business. I recently caught some news where Tesla has moved on to tribal lands, build their cars, again, probably to get around state laws and regulations, taxes. I don't know what their motive would be, but we're really out there, and we're a big part of this country, not only just their history, but their operation. As Chief mentioned earlier, if you follow your course in business, you will likely at some point bump into tribal sovereignty. So it's on you, I guess, to try to continue understanding and learning about indigenous. And Bonham House is on campus. The Myaamia Center is on campus. Certainly free to stop by and learn more. Keep an eye out for events that we have on campus. We're going to be celebrating 50 years next year. There's going to be a lot of events on campus. Be proactive in that regard.
Looked at the clock and we are coming up to 5 to 6. I just want to say, started in my opening remark, it was an incredibly significant day for the people of the because today, as I said, 175 years from the forcible removal of. I was fortunate and humbled to share this morning in the morning. And what really impacted me, Lankford spoke, emotion was voice and trauma you still felt and how trauma your people. That for me had a profound effect in my learning and my understanding. And so to cap off a day that's been a very emotional day for you and for you to both give us your time, your gift of time to be here with our students to help you understand such an important part of who we are as a school. The pathway forward for all of us is to understand difference. I know this is a big part of what you do in your first year and 4, and it's something we try and celebrate right throughout 4 years and set you up as future leaders so that you can embrace different, lead different, and be effective. I think tonight, perfect understand. What I hope for it, I got everything and more, was to develop a mutual understanding, to understand your past, your present, your future, and really to look at how forward your path. So as I close, again, I want to say, Mission Awe, Ima,